Jason Gilbo here at jgilbo11, taking a look at tonight's NBA slate, digging in for some value. And overall, you got a nice big slate here, a lot of reasonable totals. A lot of those coming in the second half of tonight's games. So probably a late night hammering is a good idea, especially with the Suns game, Rockets game as well. Celtics game and Spurs are both 209. A couple blowout concerns, which we'll talk about, but diving into Dallas and Washington, 206 total. Dallas just has a 99 team total tonight. I'm not really looking at a lot of value from them. I know Wes Matthews is cheap, but with Jeremy Lamb, Buddy Hield kind of opening up some value, there's other options to go right now. Seth Curry, a little bit expensive for my taste in this type of matchup. Basically, Dallas is kind of out of play tonight. As far as Washington goes, the backcourt always a higher usage than the front court. I don't mind those guys in more of a tournament aspect because they're not going to be high owned on tonight's slate. Marcin Gortat, good spot. Could be a guy who locks down a double-double tonight just with a bad rebounding Dallas team. The problem is there's just a lot more consistent centers that I'll be looking at tonight, so he's kind of off of my radar. And basically this game not really as appealing as it looks. Charlotte, Indiana, the next one here, and Nicholas Batum already ruled out. That means Jeremy Lamb's going to get a nice bump up in usage. 5,600 on DK, so they rose his price tag rather quickly. If we're looking on DraftKings or on FanDuel, sorry, he's still 4,900. So you're getting a pretty good rate on him anyway. And looking at what he's done this season, with Batum out, sees about 24% usage, averages 30 minutes per game, alongside a 17, 8, and 2 line. So Lamb's going to be another popular play tonight. They were quick to rise his price a little bit, but still excellent value. Kemba Walker in play as well. What do we do with this front court? Marvin Williams has absolutely been crushing it. I still like him tonight. You look at Indiana, not a good rebounding team. They rank 24th against power forwards, 26th in rebounding. You look at Marvin Williams, and he's averaging about 40 fantasy points over his last 5 games. So I don't mind using him tonight. I was kind of surprised with his ownership when Kaminsky came back. It did drop down quite a bit. I don't mind using him, even though the ownership might creep up a little bit more now. On the Pacers side, I do like Paul George. He's crushed Charlotte this season, been playing really well, really consistent basketball of late. Miles Turner's also in a good spot, but Paul George, I like him more of as a swerve off of like Kawhi Leonard tonight if you are paying up at small forward, even though there are a couple cheap options. So you do get a little bit of a discount there. So Paul George, certainly playable cash games and GPP, so look to go that route. As far as the other guys, no interest in Thad Young, no real interest in Teague tonight. More just Miles Turner in a tournament aspect and George. Jazz Pistons, this one, no thank you. 199 team total. I'm not looking at really anyone in this game. On a full slate, there's no really need to go after this one. Pelicans Heat 205. Heat have a 105 total. Dragic will be playing tonight. Can finally see again. I do like him in tournaments. I think he's a pretty good swerve around the same price as guys like, Rubio. You look at D'Angelo Russell, Jordan Clarkson, all going to be kind of popular options. So I do like Dragic as a little bit of a swerve, has some upside as well. I'm off of Whiteside. I think it's a crowded front court right now. Pelicans actually have been fairly decent against centers. And as far as on the Pelican side of things, the only guy I really have any interest in is Jordan Crawford, who's been playing some minutes off the bench. But unlike last game, there's definitely more options, to kind of go with instead of Crawford. I know we talked about him yesterday. So Pelicans, just a 99 team total. I'm sort of off of those names there. Not a ton of value to really look at. Minnesota and Boston, 209 total. This one should be relatively close. Looking at Minnesota here, obviously the Towns Rubio stack is going to be intriguing tonight. Gorgerai Dang's always an interesting option. Good cash game play. Not a ton of upside, but if you are looking for a cheaper guy to kind of plug and play tonight, I think he's reasonable. Just 5,300 on FanDuel, so a decent price for him there. On DraftKings, he's only 52, so this is a guy can go see get a nice double-double just because, one, Boston really struggles against opposing bigs. They're not a good rebounding team, and a decent total there. So I can kind of see him putting up his usual maybe 10 and 12 with a block and steal type of game tonight. I don't mind that at all. On the Boston side of things, for value, I mean, Avery Bradley's still on the cheaper side. I like him as more of a GPP pivot because you can still go cheaper with Lamb and Heald. I like Devin Booker as well, who we'll get to. As far as other guys in terms of value, Isaiah Thomas' price is coming down a little bit. I like him in tournaments. Al Horford, reasonable spot for him as well, who's starting to pick things back up. The price is still cheap just because of that horrible stretch that he had. Not a bad spot here. Boston with a 107 total to kind of go after. I don't mind using him. I mean, on DraftKings, especially at 5,700. I know there's a lot of guys in that range, but with guys like Zubac, Alon Williams, who kind of picked up in price, they now rival Horford in kind of that range. And Horford does bring a little bit more consistency when he's getting those minutes and playing the right way like he has been the last couple of days. Portland and San Antonio. On the Portland side of things, I don't have really any interest here. Just a 99 team total. Kawhi Leonard back, little iffy for me. Taking these guys at these prices, there's just far better options. On the Spurs side, we did get news that LaMarcus Aldridge is back tonight, so that kind of kills the David Lee value. No minutes restrictions, so it's kind of a stay away. I mean, obviously Aldridge in a good spot. Power forwards against Portland has been a thing this year. Kawhi Leonard back as well. So looking at me, I still like Kawhi Leonard tonight quite a bit, even at his heightened price tag. Patty Mills, the price did get bumped up quite a bit. I mean, 5,300 on DraftKings, just 44 on FanDuel. Murray's already ruled out. Tony Parker is questionable. If they're both ruled out, he's a playable option on FanDuel still. DraftKings, not so much at that price. There's far better options to pay up for, that are just a little bit more. So as I said, I mean, Gasol, David Lee, not going to see the minutes. Gasol was kind of not seeing the most consistent minutes even when Aldridge was out was a little bit weird, but did have that one big game in there. Has had a couple big games off the bench. We did see some consistency about a week and a half ago, but just far from a GPP play. And because that center position is really loaded with guys in that price range, I'm probably just staying away. Lakers and Rockets. This one is a big blowout concern here. 235 total, though. But we're looking here. I mean, Rockets are about 17, 18-point favorites. Looking at the Lakers side of things, I mean, I do still have some interest in the young guys like Zubac, whose price did come up. Really nice price there on FanDuel. You look at Houston, I mean, 27th against centers, middle-of-the-road rebounding team. Zubac, I mean, we kind of get an indicator from that Denver game because, one, it was a blowout, and we still saw guys like Clarkson, Russell, Zubac come in and play, Ingram as well, play into that and kind of finish the game. So I think that's what we're going to see. Just with guys like Deng, Mozgov, ruled out for the season just to get the look at their youth. We're going to start to see these guys play a little bit more consistent down the stretch. And as far as the backcourt goes, I like Jordan Clarkson in cash games. Great value tonight. D'Angelo Russell is more the GPP play, who is about $1,000 more expensive. Both have been playing really well, about 30 minutes, regardless of who starts. We've seen it both ways. And Zubac in play, Ingram in play on DraftKings, on FanDuel, so I don't mind him. Outside of that, though, I mean, we're not really looking at Randall tonight. Cheap value, more of a tournament option. Basically, everyone here is under 7,500 on both sides. Randall got a little bit more pricey for me, especially on DraftKings, so do note that. On the Rockets side, Harden, expensive. The ceiling might not be there tonight just because of the blowout concern. I do like him as a tournament option that is more of a correlation with this game because if it does stay close, Harden's obviously going to put up monster points. But for me, I'd rather take some shots with some of these cheaper guys, like Ryan Anderson, Patrick Beverley, Trevor Ariza, all great tournament options tonight. Clint Capella is probably the reasonable cash game value on this slate. One gets a nice matchup against the Lakers team. Once again, struggles to rebound, struggles against centers. Capella's playing really well, tick up in minutes as well. Good fantasy points per minute guy. 5,500 on DraftKings where you can roster two center. I like that. Capella 5,300. Really good swerve off of Zubac, who's going to be popular. So I do like him. I mean, Zubac, we've seen him start two games. One was a monster outing. One was a little bit down in comparison to what he's been doing before. So, I don't think he's 100% consistent. So I think Capella looks like a good swerve, if you think Zubac is going to fall. Memphis and Chicago, 202. Kind of looks like an ugly matchup, but I like some of these guys as pivots. I mean, Mike Conley, a little expensive for me on DraftKings, or on FanDuel, sorry, at 8,000. I do like him at 7,600. I think he's going to come way lower owned just because Ricky Rubio's right there playing really well. Conley's in a good spot against, Rajon Rondo, who inserted himself in the back of the lineup, who's not really on my radar tonight. I guess he did have a good game. Yes, this is a much tougher matchup against Conley, usually a guy that I don't target against. I know Cameron Payne's out. Rondo should get consistent minutes, but I'm probably just going to be staying away and looking to kind of use some other options or a little bit more. With Chandler Parsons out, we saw Vince Carter get a bump. Tony Allen's cheap. I just think with the other value that's in the later game and that Suns-Kings game, I'm probably just going to be looking to stay away at this point. Conley's the only real option I'll be looking at. Maybe a Marcus Gasol on DraftKings at only 7,600 in the tournament. Memphis just always gains lower ownership than they should. Chicago, this is a tough matchup for a team that's just been really inconsistent this year. On a full slate, I don't really want to dive in. Kings and Suns, next one, 221. Buddy Hield's played 30 or more minutes in each of the last 3 games, been really crushing his value. Prices come up just a little bit. I don't mind him. Keep an eye on Tyreek Evans, who's questionable for tonight. I know Lawson should be back in there, but Hield did play 30 minutes, even with those guys at health anyway. Has seen about a 24% usage. You look at the Suns, they rank 23rd against shooting guards. Kings have that nice 108 total. I don't mind Hield. Obviously, because Lamb's going to be the standout value at shooting guard, I think pairing him with him, especially on FanDuel, is an interesting way to go. And as far as the other options, Willie Cauley-Stein in play for me at power forward. Now that David Lee's out, you kind of get a little bit more weakness in terms of value down there. I think Cauley-Stein's going to be a safe option against a team that does struggle against power forwards. And just look at that game in general, 221, reasonable spread there. That one should be a fun one to target. And on the Suns, we can look at Collison and Lawson and GPPs right now. More so Collison, I think right now Lawson's kind of trending back downwards. It's really hard to trust just because the rotation can be really inconsistent. I think Hield and Cauley-Stein are probably your safer bets right now. The rest are more just high-risk GPP options. But on the Suns side, Devin Booker at a really nice mid-range price, playing really well of late. I'll continue to use him at that price tag. Eric Bledsoe's a little bit more expensive, not playing heavy minutes, which is a downside to him. I think we can continue to look at guys like TJ Warren. Marquise Chris is an interesting GPP play, but Warren and Alon Williams are guys that I'm at the most intrigued in just because, one, they've just been really consistent options. 113 total there against the Kings. That's just a mediocre defense. This is a good mid-range team to kind of build around tonight as a core, with that pace being at home as well. Milwaukee and Los Angeles, last one here. Clippers 7-point favorites. Milwaukee, in terms of value, doesn't really bring a lot to the table just because it is inconsistent. Greg Monroe is always a decent GPP play. In a crowded front court, we haven't seen Terrence Jones get any run. You look at Thon Maker, will draw some starts at times, but doesn't really play a whole ton. John Henson as well. I still have some interest in Middleton, an okay spot for him at a mid-range price. I think he's a good GPP target tonight because a lot of people are off of him over a few down games. And outside of that, there's no one else to really look at on the Milwaukee team. I think overall, you're probably looking at the Clippers side, who on DraftKings, have some really reasonable prices. Chris Paul, 8,200, Blake Griffin, 7,900, DeAndre Jordan, 6,600. So, I like taking advantage of those prices. FanDuel, they're a little bit more pricey. DeAndre Jordan 7.2, Griffin 8.8, Paul 8.9. So there are some noticeable differences in between the Clippers there on between the sites. So they actually do draw some decent value for me, and also in some decent spot against a bad Milwaukee team in terms of a front court. And with a 108 total, I'm curious to see some ownership. I think obviously they'll draw a little bit higher on DraftKings because of the price, but I don't think they'll be particularly keyed in on just because that Lakers Rockets game and also Suns Kings. So you might be able to get a little bit lower ownership as well. So if you want to head over to dailyfantasycafe.com, we got cheat sheets and other great content and tools.